Amanpreet Singh came to Canada chasing a dream. Jessica Taylor turned it into a nightmare. What began as a fake marriage for immigration spiraled into blackmail, betrayal, and a chilling disappearance that left investigators stunned and a community in fear. In 2018, Amanpreet Singh left his small village in Punjab, India, with a heart full of hope and a student visa in hand. He had been accepted into a mid-level college in Toronto to study computer science. His parents, farmers struggling with debt, had pooled every resource to make this possible. The family believed that once Aman secured a job abroad, their financial struggles would come to an end. Canada, with its promises of stability and opportunity, seemed like the ideal place to begin a new life. But the reality was far different from the dream. Life in Toronto was expensive, and the part-time jobs available to international students barely covered rent, tuition, and daily expenses. Aman found himself juggling classes in the morning, back-breaking kitchen work in the evenings, and graveyard shifts cleaning office buildings on weekends. The pressure to succeed and send money home became suffocating. It wasn't long before Aman realized that the path to permanent residency in Canada was far from straightforward. After graduation, international students needed to secure a job offer from a licensed employer, qualify for post-graduation work permits, and eventually apply through complex immigration streams. For many, the process took years, often ending in rejection. Aman couldn't afford to wait that long. That's when a fellow Indian student casually mentioned the marriage route. It was an open secret among some immigrant circles. Marry a Canadian citizen, and you could bypass the years-long immigration process. The idea felt extreme, even dishonest. But over time, desperation began to outweigh doubt. Aman started asking quiet questions. He was eventually introduced to a broker who claimed he could arrange a paper marriage for a fee. The broker promised it was safe, common, and that no one ever got caught. Aman made a decision he would come to regret forever. Jessica Taylor was nothing like Aman had imagined. When he first met her through the broker, she appeared confident, laid back, and completely unfazed by the idea of a fake marriage. She had short blonde hair, a tattoo sleeve on one arm, and a cigarette almost always in hand. At 28, she had already been part of 2 previous sham marriages, both carefully staged and quietly annulled after her husbands received their permanent residency. To Jessica, this was a business deal, nothing more. For $15,000, she agreed to marry Aman and pose as his wife for at least 2 years. The process was mechanical. Aman and Jessica took staged photos at local parks, malls, and family gatherings. They created a joint bank account, bought matching toothbrushes, and even shared a Netflix subscription. Their lives were scripted to survive the scrutiny of immigration officers. They practiced answers to possible interview questions and memorized fake anniversary dates. The basement apartment they shared was sparse but functional, rented specifically to show they were living together. Behind the scenes, however, cracks were forming. Jessica had her own demons. Unknown to Aman, she was battling a growing addiction to painkillers and had racked up significant debt from gambling and drug use. The money Aman had paid was gone within weeks. Desperate, Jessica began demanding more. She claimed she needed help with rent, food, and bills, threatening to walk away if he didn't pay. Aman, already drowning in debt himself, refused. He believed the deal was done with the initial payment. But Jessica saw things differently. She had power now, legal leverage over his future in Canada. If she reported the marriage as fake, his entire life in the country would fall apart. What began as a calculated agreement quickly turned into a dangerous power struggle built on lies, fear, and growing resentment. Jessica's arrest was brief, but the consequences were immediate. After Aman reported her to immigration, claiming she had orchestrated the fake marriage to exploit him, officials began a formal investigation. Jessica was detained for questioning and released a few days later, but her reputation in the underground marriage scam network was destroyed. Brokers cut ties with her, fearing attention from law enforcement. Her name circulated as someone who couldn't be trusted. With no steady source of income and mounting debts, she spiraled deeper into instability. Her rage toward Aman consumed her. In her eyes, he had ruined her life, not the other way around. She began to gather information on him, where he worked, which college he attended, and who his closest friends were. Through social media and old contacts, she uncovered a small circle of other international students who had paid for sham marriages. Jessica began contacting them one by one, threatening to expose their arrangements unless they paid her silence fees. Aman realized what she was doing when one of his acquaintances confronted him, asking why Jessica had his name and their details. The group panicked. If Jessica went public or cooperated with authorities, all of them risked deportation and criminal charges. They discussed their options and considered pooling money to pay her off. Aman, however, refused. He had already reported her and believed that giving in again would only make things worse. Tensions escalated. Jessica started following Aman around campus, showing up near his work and posting cryptic messages online aimed at him. He filed a police report for harassment, but without physical threats, little action was taken. What Aman didn't know was that Jessica was no longer acting alone. Rumors swirled that she had connected with others from the criminal underworld, people who knew how to make problems disappear. Amanpreet Singh vanished without warning in early February 2020. He had missed several classes, skipped shifts at his part-time job, and stopped answering calls and texts. At first, his friends assumed he was just laying low, trying to escape the chaos surrounding Jessica. But when a full week passed with no sign of him, concern turned into alarm. His roommate reported him missing, prompting a police investigation. Officers arrived at the small basement apartment Aman shared with another student. His belongings were still inside, laptop on the desk, shoes by the door, and his passport locked in a drawer. The only thing missing was his phone, which had last pinged near Lake Ontario late one night, 2 days before he was reported missing. Surveillance footage from nearby traffic cameras showed a car parked briefly by the lakeshore around that time, but the plates were unreadable. The mystery deepened quickly. Police began retracing Aman's steps. They questioned his classmates, co-workers, and his roommate. Most of them mentioned the growing tension between Aman and Jessica. When investigators questioned her, she acted indifferent. She claimed she hadn't seen or spoken to Aman in months and insisted she had moved on. But inconsistencies in her story raised suspicions. CCTV footage soon contradicted her claims. On the night Aman disappeared, she was captured on camera entering the apartment building where he lived. Though she denied it, the evidence couldn't be ignored. A search warrant was issued for her residence. Inside, police found a pair of men's shoes matching the ones Aman was last seen wearing, a set of duplicate keys to his apartment, and traces of his blood in the trunk of her car. Then came the chilling discovery. A fisherman spotted a large suitcase floating near the lake's edge. Inside were blood-soaked clothes and a small USB drive. The USB drive found in the suitcase was a turning point in the investigation. When police examined its contents, they uncovered a series of audio recordings, each one dated and organized in a separate folder. Aman had made them in the weeks leading up to his disappearance. The files revealed a disturbing pattern of threats, blackmail, and fear. Aman had been secretly recording conversations with Jessica, possibly as protection in case anything went wrong. In one of the earlier recordings, Jessica could be heard demanding more money, claiming she was owed for keeping the marriage believable. As the recordings progressed, her tone grew more aggressive. In one file, she hinted at knowing people who don't ask questions, and in another, she warned Aman that if he crossed her, she could take everything away. The final audio clip was dated 2 nights before Aman disappeared. Her voice was cold and deliberate as she said, "If I go down, you go with me." With the USB files, investigators had the clearest evidence yet of Jessica's escalating threats. They brought her in for a second interrogation. Faced with the recordings, the physical evidence, and mounting public pressure, Jessica finally cracked, but her version of events only added to the mystery. She claimed Aman's death wasn't premeditated. According to her, they met to talk things out, but a fight broke out. She alleged Aman attacked her first, and in the struggle, he fell and hit his head. Panicked, she said she wrapped his body in bedsheets, stuffed it in a suitcase, and dumped it in the lake, too afraid to call police. She denied any involvement from outside parties and insisted it was an accident. Despite a full search, Aman's body was never found. The suitcase was all that remained, alongside a story no one could fully verify. Jessica's confession led to formal charges of manslaughter, obstruction of justice, and immigration fraud. As the case moved to trial, the USB recordings became the centerpiece of the prosecution's argument, painting a picture of calculated manipulation and escalating threats. Though Jessica insisted Aman's death was accidental, the evidence suggested premeditation. Her possession of his keys, the traces of blood in her car, and the staged disappearance all pointed to something far more sinister than a moment of panic. During the trial, more disturbing information came to light. Investigators discovered that Jessica had kept a notebook listing names, payment amounts, and immigration timelines, believed to be records of other fraudulent marriages. Several international students, mostly from India and Southeast Asia, were called to testify. Some admitted to paying brokers for fake marriages. Others denied involvement, but the details were damning. A larger network had been operating beneath the surface, with Jessica playing a central role. Immigration Canada launched a broader investigation into marriage fraud across Toronto and nearby cities. Over 40 sham marriages were uncovered, and dozens of international students were placed under review. Some voluntarily left the country to avoid prosecution. The underground system Aman had once turned to for help had finally been exposed, but at a terrible cost. Jessica was sentenced to 18 years in prison. The judge called her actions a betrayal of trust and a deliberate exploitation of vulnerable people. Yet despite the conviction, many questions remained unanswered. Jessica refused to name anyone else involved. The brokers who arranged the fake marriages disappeared without a trace. And most haunting of all, Aman's body was never found. Rumors continued to circulate. Some believed Jessica wasn't acting alone. Others whispered that Aman had faked his own death to escape the system. But no answers ever came. Oh,